On a stormy back road, a woman's scream is swallowed by the crash of twisted metal. Her car, mangled and burning, becomes her coffin, until a stranger pulls her from the wreckage and disappears without a name. That woman is Claire Reynolds, a sharp-witted commercial pilot grounded not just by injury, but by fate. And the man who saved her, Eli Maddox, a quiet small-town mechanic with a buried past and hands built to fix broken things, including people. When Claire tracks him down, not for closure, but connection, their lives begin to entwine. She brings fire and vision. He brings grit and healing. What starts as a thank you turns into something bold and beautiful. A dream to restore a forgotten jet and, in the process, rebuild themselves. As sparks fly in the hangar and in their hearts, ghosts from Eli's past threaten to stall their momentum. But Claire won't back down. Not from gravity, not from love, and certainly not from the man who gave her a second chance at life. And when she returns, not just with gratitude, but with a ring and a jet, they discover that some rescues aren't about pulling someone from wreckage, but lifting them into flight. The rain hit the windshield in violent slashes, the wipers barely keeping pace. Claire Reynolds gripped the steering wheel tighter, knuckles white, breath quick and shallow. Her eyes flicked between the road ahead and the glowing dashboard. The GPS had lost signal miles ago. Her phone lay useless beside her, its battery drained to black. The radio hissed, the signal distorted by the storm. Alone in the dark, swallowed by trees and silence, she felt her nerves fray with each mile. She hadn't meant to take the scenic route. A detour off the interstate had promised to shave 15 minutes off her return home. But now, in the thick of a storm and miles from help, those 15 minutes felt like a deadly mistake. The curve came out of nowhere. The car's tires shrieked as she tried to steer out of the turn, but the slick pavement betrayed her. The vehicle spun, hydroplaned, and with a sickening crunch, collided with a tree. Metal screamed, glass shattered. The airbag exploded into her chest like a sledgehammer. Claire's vision blurred. Her head lolled to one side, blood trickling from a cut above her eyebrow. The acrid scent of smoke curled into her nostrils as the engine sputtered, then caught fire. Panic surged through her as she fumbled for the seatbelt, her limbs sluggish, her breath ragged. The driver's door was crushed inward. She was trapped. Outside, lightning forked through the sky. The world blurred into thunder, smoke, and red hazard lights blinking like dying stars. She screamed, but the sound barely escaped her throat. And then, headlights. They emerged through the sheets of rain, bouncing down the muddy road. A faded red pickup truck skidded to a stop. Out leapt a tall, broad-shouldered man in a grease-stained jacket. He sprinted toward the wreck without hesitation. "Hey, you in there?" he shouted, his voice cutting through the storm. Claire barely managed a weak cough in response. Eli Maddox didn't wait for a plan. He scanned the vehicle, yanked a crowbar from the back of his truck, and jammed it between the bent frame and the passenger door. Metal groaned as he leveraged all his strength. Inside, Claire blinked, her consciousness slipping. She thought she saw a face, brown eyes, soaked hair, jaw clenched in focus. With a final wrench, the door flew open. Smoke billowed out. Eli dropped the crowbar and crawled inside. "I've got you," he whispered. His arms were strong, sure. He lifted her like she weighed nothing. As soon as he cleared the wreckage, the flames roared to life, engulfing the car in a violent blast that lit the forest in an eerie orange glow. He ran, shielding her body with his own, until he reached the truck. Laying her gently in the passenger seat, he wrapped a jacket around her, his own hands trembling from adrenaline. "You're gonna be okay," he murmured, turning the key and slamming the truck into gear. Claire faded in and out, the edges of the world growing softer, but she heard his voice, calm, grounded, and real. Not an angel, a mechanic, covered in oil and rain and smoke. They reached the town clinic in minutes. Eli carried her inside, shouted for help, then turned and walked away before anyone could ask questions. He didn't wait for a thank you. He didn't need it. Inside, nurses and doctors surrounded Claire, rushing her into emergency care. As she slipped into unconsciousness, the only clear thought in her mind was the image of his face, fleeting but unforgettable. The next morning the wreck was gone, towed. The flames were long extinguished, but word of the mysterious savior spread fast in the small town. Locals had seen the truck. Some said it was Eli Maddox, the mechanic who kept to himself, who'd lost his family years ago and rarely spoke to anyone. No one could confirm it. And Eli, he said nothing. Back in his garage, under the glow of a flickering fluorescent bulb, he picked up a wrench and returned to work. Fixing engines was easier than fixing hearts. He hadn't expected to see flames again, not after what happened, but when he'd seen her there, helpless, something inside him had clicked. Instinct, duty, maybe redemption. He told himself it was over, but the story was just beginning. The clinic's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as Claire's eyelids fluttered open. Her throat felt dry, and her chest burned where the seatbelt had bruised her ribs. Bandages crisscrossed her forehead and arms. Pain radiated through her body like a dull echo. She was alive. A nurse appeared beside her bed with a gentle smile. "You're awake. That's a good sign." Claire tried to speak, but only a croak came out. "You were in a bad accident. A passerby brought you in just in time. The car exploded not long after." Claire's mind scrambled to catch up. The crash, the fire, the rain, and him. "There was someone," she managed. "A man." The nurse nodded. "A local mechanic, I think. He didn't give his name, just dropped you off and vanished." Claire stared at the ceiling. The image of his face haunted her, soaked, soot-smudged, determined, a total stranger who had pulled her from death and walked away as if it meant nothing. Meanwhile, miles away, Eli Maddox was scrubbing his hands in a rusted sink at the garage. The smell of gasoline clung to him. He could still feel the heat of the flames against his back. "Boss?" came the voice of Jay, the teenage apprentice. "You okay?" "Fine," Eli said quickly, tossing the towel aside. "Get back to work." Jay paused. "People say you saved someone last night." Eli didn't answer. Instead, he picked up a socket wrench and slid under the old Chevy he'd been restoring. He hadn't meant to be a hero. He'd just reacted. But as he lay on the concrete floor, the image of Claire's face kept coming back. Fragile, bloodied, but alive. That night, Claire couldn't sleep. The hospital bed was sterile, foreign. Her mind buzzed with questions. Who was he? Why didn't he stay? She made a vow. "I have to find him," she whispered. Days passed in a blur of medical tests, therapy sessions, and interviews with local police and insurance agents. Claire was lucky. 3 cracked ribs, a mild concussion, and deep bruising. Her license was temporarily suspended, pending evaluation. For a commercial pilot, being grounded was more than an inconvenience. It was a wound. The crash had clipped her wings. In the hospital courtyard, she sat with a paper cup of coffee and stared at the sky. Jets crossed overhead in white trails. She missed the cockpit, the thrill of ascent, the solitude above the clouds. but her thoughts always returned to him. With help from a nurse, she tracked down the local news segment about the mystery mechanic. A blurry photo showed a red pickup parked outside a garage in the next town over. She paused the video. There it was, the same truck that pulled her from the wreckage. Claire discharged herself a week later against the doctor's advice. She needed answers more than she needed rest. Dressed in jeans and a leather jacket, she took a cab to the address she found in a back issue of the town's directory, Maddox Auto and Repair. When she arrived, the shop looked like something from another era. Rusted signage, chipped paint, and a row of vintage cars that hadn't moved in years. Inside, the clanging of metal echoed. Eli was under the hood of a Ford when she walked in. "Excuse me," she said, her voice firm. He looked up, startled, their eyes locked. "I think you saved my life," she said. He wiped his hands on a rag, trying to hide the surprise and the fear. "You got the wrong guy," he muttered. "No," she said, stepping closer. "I remember your face. I remember the fire. You pulled me out." He said nothing, just stared at the floor. "I came to thank you," Claire said. Eli glanced at her bandages. "You should rest." "I'd rather talk." They sat on a beat-up bench outside the garage. A dog barked in the distance. Rain had left the air damp and earthy. Claire watched him as he worked a toothpick between his teeth. He was quiet, guarded, but not unkind. "You don't like talking about it," she said. "I'm not used to being found," he replied. She raised an eyebrow. "That's supposed to be mysterious." He cracked a smile. "Not on purpose." Claire's tone softened. "Why didn't you stay at the clinic?" Eli looked at the horizon. "Didn't need thanks, didn't want attention. I did what anyone would have done." "No," Claire said, her voice sharpening. "Most people wouldn't run into a burning car." Silence fell between them. She glanced around the garage. Old photos, dusty tools, a half-assembled engine. "You built all this yourself?" "After my dad passed," he said. "Didn't have much left to hold on to." Claire hesitated. "And now?" Eli shrugged. "Just keep things running." She tilted her head. "Have you ever thought about flying?" He blinked. "Planes?" "Yeah." He shook his head. "I used to, a long time ago." Claire smiled. "You saved a pilot, you know." Eli looked down. "I saved a person." She rose. "Well, that person wants to buy you dinner." Eli looked up. "Why?" "Because sometimes the hero doesn't get to walk away." He hesitated, then nodded. "All right. One dinner." Claire grinned. "Deal." As she left, he watched her go. For the first time in years, something stirred inside him. Hope, maybe. Possibility. He didn't know where this road would lead, but something told him it wouldn't end in smoke this time. Claire had always believed in logic and checklists. As a pilot, everything was calculated. Flight plans, fuel loads, safety protocols. But this, tracking down a stranger based on gut feeling and a blurry news report, this was uncharted airspace. Back in her apartment, she combed through forums, local news bulletins, and garage websites. Most people would have let it go. He'd saved her life, and that should have been enough. But for Claire, it wasn't just about gratitude. It was the way he looked at her, not like a victim, but like a human being, like someone he wanted to rescue, not just from fire, but from falling apart. One afternoon, she called every garage in the county, pretending she needed her alternator replaced. It was the sixth call when a teenage voice answered with a slight echo of recognition. "Maddox Auto," the voice said. "This is going to sound weird," Claire replied, "but I think your boss saved my life. I'm looking for the man who pulled me from a car crash outside Timber Creek a few weeks ago." There was a pause. I think that might have been Eli," the voice said, "but he doesn't talk about it. He probably wouldn't like me saying—" "I won't tell him," Claire cut in gently, "but I need to talk to him, please." The teen gave her the address. She drove out the next day, heart pounding as she passed through sleepy farmland, rusted mailboxes, and winding tree-canopied roads. When she arrived, she sat in her car for a moment, staring at the garage. Her palms were sweaty. It felt like prepping for a flight through turbulence. And when she finally stepped through the open bay doors, everything changed. He was there, Eli, under the hood of a car, sleeves rolled up, grease on his jaw, exactly as she remembered, except this time he saw her coming. "You again," he said with a half-smile. "Guess that dinner offer wasn't a bluff." "No bluff," she said, stepping inside. "You still owe me a conversation." Eli glanced around. "This isn't much of a place for it. I don't mind the smell of motor oil." They talked again that day, longer, deeper. She learned about his shop, his past, and the quiet way he looked after the town without asking for credit. He learned about her flying career, the crash, and her struggle to get back in the cockpit. What neither of them said, though, was that something had started the moment she stepped out of the hospital and walked into his garage. And it wouldn't stop now. The second time she visited, she brought sandwiches and 2 cans of root beer. The third time, she brought her flight manual and a broken watch from her cockpit kit, something she claimed needed fixing, but which she secretly hoped he'd keep. By the 4th visit, Eli was waiting for her before she even parked. Their conversations grew longer, easier. They laughed more. She teased him about his ancient radio. He teased her about being too clean to fix cars. One day, she walked in to find an old airplane schematic pinned to the wall behind his desk. "What's this?" she asked. He shrugged. "Something I started looking at again." Claire smiled. "Didn't peg you for the dreaming type." "I used to be." "Well," she said, tapping the blueprint, "dreams don't fix themselves." That night, they sat on the back of his pickup and watched a plane slice across the evening sky. "I never thought I'd fly again," she said quietly. Eli looked at her. "You will." His voice wasn't just confident, it was certain, and she believed him. He didn't know it yet, but she was already planning something that would bring both of their dreams back into reach. One morning, Claire walked into the garage with a duffel bag over her shoulder and a gleam in her eye. "Put that wrench down," she said. Eli looked up from the engine he was working on. "Why?" "Because I got clearance to fly again. Physical passes. Evaluator signed off. I'm back in the sky." He grinned. "That's great, Claire. You deserve it." She tossed the bag on the bench. "And you're coming with me." He blinked. "Come again?" "I booked an hour in a trainer jet at the airfield, just outside Belridge. 2-seater. Thought you might want to see what it's like from the pilot's seat." He hesitated. "Claire, I haven't flown since—" "Since what?" she said softly. Eli looked away. "My brother was in a plane crash years ago. I was supposed to be with him, but I stayed behind to fix a carburetor. He didn't make it. I never flew again." Claire stepped closer. "You saved me, Eli. That has to mean something. Maybe it's time you stopped grounding yourself." It took a long moment, but then slowly he nodded. That afternoon they soared above the clouds together. Claire handled the takeoff. Midway through, she handed him the controls. His hands trembled as he took them, but then, steady. The world below shrank. The sky opened. He laughed, a sound she hadn't heard before, full, warm, real. When they landed, she turned to him. "Still think dreams don't fix themselves?" "No," he said, "but sometimes someone hands you the wrench." They stood on the tarmac, wind in their hair, hearts lighter than air. Their bond was no longer unlikely. It was undeniable. The sound of turbines winding up was like a heartbeat restarting. As the training jet taxied to a stop, Claire and Eli stood near the hangar, helmets tucked under their arms, the wind teasing the edges of Claire's flight suit. Eli squinted at the jet. "She's sleek." "She's free," Claire replied with a grin. They stepped toward the aircraft. The instructor gave them a thumbs up, and Claire climbed into the pilot seat with practiced grace. Eli hesitated before following into the co-pilot's seat. Inside the tight cockpit, everything buzzed with energy. Controls, sensors, his own pulse. Claire flipped switches, adjusted gauges. "Are you ready for this?" "I should be asking you that," Eli muttered. Claire laughed. "Too late now." The jet rolled down the runway, picking up speed. The vibration climbed through their bones until, with a sudden lightness, the wheels left the ground. They were flying. Eli's hands gripped the sidebars as the jet climbed. Claire looked over and smiled. "You okay?" He nodded, awestruck. "It's different when you're up here, peaceful." She leveled the flight and offered him the controls. "Want to try?" He hesitated, then reached forward. The stick responded, and the plane tilted smoothly into a shallow bank. His face lit up. "You're a natural," Claire said. Eli couldn't speak. The sky unfolded around him, blue and endless. For the first time since his brother's crash, he didn't feel chained to the ground. He felt whole. They flew loops, climbed to altitude, and dipped into low passes. Claire guided him through it all, and he listened, learned, and let go. When they landed, Eli removed his helmet slowly. "That was incredible." Claire leaned over, her voice low. "You belong up here, Eli." He looked at her, really looked, and saw not just gratitude in her eyes, but trust, respect, something deeper. "I never thought I'd fly again," he said. "Well," she smiled, "I never thought I'd survive a car wreck. Guess we're both defying odds." A week later, Claire showed up at the garage with a rolled-up blueprint and a mischievous grin. "What's that?" Eli asked, wiping his hands. "Your next big project." She unrolled the blueprint across his workbench. It was the schematic of a decommissioned private jet, classic, powerful, and in rough condition. "I found her in a scrapyard. She's being auctioned next month." Eli raised an eyebrow. "You're buying a jet?" "We're buying a jet," she corrected, "together." He stared at her, caught off guard. "Claire, this isn't like fixing up an old truck. This is serious money. Time, logistics." "I've run the numbers," she said. "I've got the licenses, the hangar lined up, even a partial crew willing to volunteer. What I need is someone who knows how to rebuild something from the inside out." "You want to fly this thing?" "I want to build it," she said. "Together. From the rivets to the engine. We make it airworthy. Then we name her, and then we fly." Eli paced, conflicted. "I know you're scared," Claire added softly. "So am I. But think about it. A jet we rebuilt ourselves. A dream come true." He looked down at the blueprint again. "I'd want full say over the engine mounts," he muttered. She grinned. "Deal." The hangar echoed with the clatter of tools and the hum of voices. Claire had negotiated the jet for a steal, convincing the scrapyard owner that it was going to a veteran rehabilitation program, a lie that technically wasn't entirely false. Eli called it creative truth. The jet's frame was battered but salvageable. They named her the Phoenix. For weeks they worked side by side, stripping old panels, rewiring the cockpit, sanding metal, and documenting every part. Claire handled logistics, procurement, and flight certifications. Eli transformed into a man with purpose, welding, sketching, laughing again. Jay, the teenage apprentice from the garage, begged to join them after school. "You guys are like Iron Man and Captain Marvel," he said. Eli rolled his eyes. "We're more like duct tape and stubbornness," Claire added, "and a little magic." In the process, they became more than partners in restoration. They became inseparable. Their hands brushed too often to be accidental. Their glances lingered. One night, while organizing the avionics cabinet, Eli reached up for a tool just as Claire did. Their fingers touched. Neither pulled away. "You're good at this," Claire said, voice low. "So are you," Eli replied, not just meaning the wiring. They didn't kiss, not yet, but something had undeniably shifted. One afternoon, Claire showed Eli an old photograph, her father beside a propeller plane smiling. "He was a crop duster," she said, "taught me how to fly before I could reach the pedals." Eli smiled. "You've always belonged in the sky." Claire turned the photo over. "So do you." Later that week, as they installed the cockpit seats, Jay asked, "What are you guys going to do when this thing flies?" Claire glanced at Eli. "Take it around the country." Eli smirked. "Maybe show other people how to build things that can fly." "Like a school?" Jay asked. Claire nodded slowly. "Why not?" They'd started building a jet, but now they were building something even bigger, a mission, a future. Together, the Phoenix was nearly complete. Claire stood at the edge of the hangar, admiring the gleam of fresh paint under the overhead lights. The fuselage had been polished to a brilliant silver, accented by navy blue lines that gave it a look of fierce elegance. The engines purred during their last test run, and the avionics system had passed all inspections. The first official test flight was scheduled in just 5 days. But Eli had grown distant. He still showed up every morning, still worked hard, still cracked jokes with Jay. But there was a tightness behind his eyes, a shadow that hadn't been there before. Claire noticed the way he avoided conversations about the future, the way he hesitated when she mentioned potential travel plans, partnerships, or the aviation school they dreamed of launching together. That evening, she confronted him. They sat on top of the hangar roof, legs dangling off the edge, watching the stars begin to blink into view. "Eli," she said gently, "what's going on?" He didn't answer for a moment. Then, softly, "I keep thinking this is too good to be real." Claire turned to face him. "It is real. We built it." He nodded slowly, then sighed. Before the crash, I was stuck. After my brother died in that crash, I blamed myself. He was flying solo for the first time. I was supposed to go with him, but I stayed behind because of some stupid carburetor I thought couldn't wait. That was the last time I saw him." Claire's eyes softened. "You never told me that." "I didn't want it to color how you saw me." She placed her hand over his. "Eli, you pulled me from a burning car. You built a plane from scrap, and you helped me fly again, not just in the sky, but in life." His eyes brimmed with tears. "I'm scared that if I believe in this too much, it'll disappear too." Claire squeezed his hand. "Then let's prove it won't." They sat in silence for a long time, the stars overhead, the jet gleaming below them. He didn't say, "I love you." He didn't have to. The morning of the test flight was crisp and bright. The air buzzed with nerves and electricity. Mechanics double-checked every panel. Claire reviewed the flight plan twice. Jay ran around with a camera, filming everything for a documentary he insisted would go viral. Eli was quiet but focused, every movement precise. This was what he was made for. Claire climbed into the pilot's seat while Eli took the co-pilot's. The Phoenix hummed as she taxied down the runway. Claire reached out and touched Eli's hand. "Ready?" He nodded. "Let's take her home." The engines roared and the jet surged forward. Within seconds, they were airborne. The Phoenix climbed into the sky like she had always belonged there. They flew over rivers, hills, and golden fields. Claire let Eli take the controls for a wide turn above the lake. "You feel it?" she asked. He grinned. "Yeah, feels like flying." Then she did something unexpected. She reached into her flight suit and pulled out a small velvet box. Eli glanced over, startled. "What is that?" Claire opened it mid-air. Inside was a simple silver band inlaid with a tiny blue sapphire, his brother's favorite stone, which she had learned about from Jay. "I don't want to just fly with you," she said. "I want to land with you, build things with you, dream, fix, fail, try again every day. So marry me?" Eli blinked, stunned. Then he laughed, a deep, full, joyful sound. "You beat me to it," he said, reaching into his own flight bag and pulling out a box of his own. Claire's eyes widened. "Seriously?" He opened it. Inside was a band engraved with the words, "Rising Together." They stared at each other for a heartbeat, and then kissed, 12,000 feet above the ground. The Phoenix banked softly, as if the sky itself approved. The wedding took place 6 weeks later, on the very runway where their jet first flew. Guests sat in rows of folding chairs, flanked by vintage aircraft. The Phoenix gleamed behind the altar, freshly polished and decorated with white streamers and wildflowers. Jay officiated the ceremony, nervous, hilarious, and barely able to hold the microphone steady. Claire walked down the tarmac aisle in a gown stitched with embroidered wings. Eli waited in a tailored gray suit, a jet engine lapel pin on his collar. As she reached him, his eyes shone. "Never thought I'd say this on a runway," she whispered, "but I'm ready for takeoff." He grinned. "You've always been cleared for it." They exchanged vows that weren't just about love, but flight, freedom, and second chances. "I vow to never let us crash without rebuilding stronger," Eli said. "And I vow to pull you from every fire life throws at us," Claire replied. When Jay declared them married, cheers erupted. As they kissed, the hangar doors opened and a squadron of planes soared overhead in a skywriting tribute that spelled "Steel and Wings Forever." Later that evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, Claire and Eli stood beside their jet. "Where to first?" he asked. She smiled. "Wherever the sky takes us." They climbed into the Phoenix hand in hand and took off once more, this time not just as pilot and mechanic, but as soulmates. Not a rescue story anymore, but a flight into forever.